Hello, guys. I'm back again, and today I want to solve a question on simulation, a question from the past exam. Now, this is the question, and it reads: A wholesaler stocks an item for which demand is uncertain. He wishes to access two reordering policies, that is, order 10 units at a reorder level of 10 or order 15 units at a reorder level of 15 units to see which is more economical over a 10-day period. Now, the whole purpose or the whole point behind simulation is to mimic a real world problem. What that means is that if you want to do something, if you have a project that you want to do, instead of taking the risk of incurring all the cost and incurring all the workload to try that out in a real sense, you do what we call simulation. You create models, right, to do like a fictitious representation of what you want to achieve in real life. That model will be able to tell you if what you want to do will be successful or not. So that's the whole point of simulation. You use values to assign to what you want as your outcome. All right. So now, going on, going back to the question, a wholesaler stocks an item. Now, this question is asking you, or this question from this first line, it's saying that a wholesaler is considering two reordering policies. Now, what do you mean by reordering policy? Now, in a business or in a firm, there's what we call reorder level. What that means is that it is the level at which you let your goods to get before you now place an order. What that means is that if you should buy goods of 10,000 naira, or okay, if you should buy goods, let's say 5,000 units of goods, and you now tell yourself that when the goods get to 500 units, when people buy it and it gets to 500 units, you place an order. That is your own policy, that at every point that the units or the goods gets to 500 units, we must call our vendor to place an order. That is for you. Another person that is in the same line as you, in the same line of business as you, would say that me, when the goods get to 1,000 units, I will now call my vendor and say, vendor, I want to place an order. So this is what we call the order level. You understand? So now the wholesaler is assessing two reordering policies. Are we to order 10 units at a reorder level of 10, or are we to order 15 units at a reorder level of 15? What that means is that are we to order 15 units of goods when our goods that we bought before is at 15? That is, when our goods get to 15 units or below, we now call our vendor to supply us 15 units? Or are we to order when our goods get to 10 units or below, are we to now call our vendor to supply us 10 units? So these are the two policies that the wholesaler is what trying to appraise to determine which of them is what economically cheap. All right. So the following information is available. These are the demand per day per unit. For remember, I said the demand is uncertain. So this is just like you are just simulating. For demand per day, 4 units. Probability of getting 4 units is 10%, 5. So these are the demands that we have simulated that will come. The carrying cost. What is carrying cost? Carrying cost is that cost that you incur as a result of keeping your inventory, as a result of keeping your goods. They include those costs like the cost of insurance, cost of security to secure your goods, the cost of storage, right? So if you buy goods, you are not going to sell everything. You are definitely not going to sell everything. So if you are not going to sell everything, you are going to keep some of them for the next day. So the cost of keeping that inventory for the next day or till whenever you sell it is what we call the carrying cost. We have your ordering cost. Ordering cost, just as the name implies, talks about the cost you incur when you order a goods. It includes the purchase price itself. It includes the cost of transportation, that is from where you buy the goods to where you now bring it to your firm. Then loss of goodwill for each unit out of stock. This is also called stock out cost. That is when somebody comes to buy goods from you and your goods are finished. That means you no longer have goods. That means you have lost money. If you have 3 units of goods and somebody wants to buy 4 units, you can only sell what you have, which is 3 units. So there's remaining 1 unit that's what you cannot, that you do not have. So that is stock out cost. Lead time. Lead time refers to the procurement time. That is the period between when you place an order and when that order is actually delivered to you. If I place an order today for 5 units, I say okay, deliver it for me in 3 days. That means if I place it today, then in 3 days it will now come. That is the lead time, the period between when you place an order and when it comes. Then your opening stock. Then probability distribution to replace and all everything. So moving on to the solution in full. Now there are steps from the textbook that have been provided for you to follow, right? There are steps, so you should follow these steps in order to guide your approach and to make you know what you are doing. Now, first and foremost, right? Step one, let's see solution, right? Step one, and step one is to what? You identify the what? The objective of the simulation. The objective of the simulation. Now, the objective may be different with the question. But for this question, they said his objective is to what? Is to simulate 2 reordering policies so as to find which of them is what? Cheaper. Right? So that is the objective of this simulation. So the objective is what? To simulate the behavior of what? 2 reordering policies, right? So as to find which is cheaper. Right? So you don't forget to mention the ordering policies from the question. Okay. Then for your step two, the step two is to what? You have to identify the what? The input variables. Now, I would suggest and I would urge you to go back to the beginning of the simulation topic in the textbook. Now, from the textbook, it provided the definition of input variables, control variables, static variables, and many other terminologies that we might be using as we move on. So you go back to the textbook and it will give you a much more clearer definition. So you did identify the input variables, distinguishing controlled from uncontrolled variables, right? So for our controlled variables from this is now control variables are those variables that are controlled or can be controlled by management. So controlled variables, example of control variables here in this case is what? Our reorder level and what? Reorder quantity. Boss, hold on, sir. And then we'll now look at our uncontrolled variables, such as what? Our probabilistic demand, right? So our step three now all these steps are stated in the textbook. Our step three now is to determine the probabilistic distribution. Now, how do you do this? Right? You go about this way. You see your demand, right? Draw your line. You now put your probability. Draw your line. You now put your cumulative probability. Draw your line. And then the last one will now you now bring your random numbers. Random numbers. Right? Now, that is one thing with simulation. You keep assigning random numbers. Now, first and foremost, our demand from here is what? Just bring our demand down from equation 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Our probability here, you'd express it in percentage this time, not as a proportion. 10%, 15%, 25%, 30%, 20%, right? Our cumulative probability will now be 10. This one will be 10% first. Then 15 plus 10% gives you what? 25%. 25 plus 25 gives you what? 50%. 30 plus 50 gives you 80%. And then 20 plus 80 gives you 100%. Right? So, for our random numbers, we are now going to assign random numbers. And the random numbers are going to be in line with the probability and the cumulative probability. What do I mean? Now, the first thing first, we are going to start with 0. Why? Because from the equation, right, you can see that the number that was the least number here is what? 0. That's why we are starting with 0, right? Don't forget, it's because it's the least number. We are going to start with 0 and we are going to end with the number that is at the what? At the highest of the intervals. So we are going to start with 0 to what? 0 to what? Mind you, the number must be 10. Since the probability is 10, the numbers must be 10. So 0 to 9, there are 10 numbers. If you count from 0 itself to 9, these are 10 numbers. Then you now move on to the next, continue from 10. 10 to what? You stop at 24, right? So the numbers must be what? 25. Does that make sense? If you count from 10 to 24, the number is what? 25. So 25 to what? 49. If you count from 25 to 49, the numbers you have covered there is what? Is what? So that's how you get it. So the way you do it is you are just looking at this 80, this 50, this cumulative probability column to determine what your ending of your random number is. So if here is 49, we now start with 50. We are definitely not going to touch 80. We are going to stop at what? 79. So if here is 79, we are going to start with 80. And here, if here is 100, we are now going to end at what? 99. Does that make sense? We started with 0, but we are not going to touch 10. We'll end at 9. Then we'll now start with 10. We're not going to touch 25. We're going to end at 24. We'll now start with 25. We're not going to touch to 50. We're going to end at 49. Do you understand? All right. So that's just for your step 3. Right? So your step 3, you're not done. Now, to make your work easy, this part is not covered in the textbook. This part I want to show you now is not covered in the textbook. And I introduce an easy and a clear way. Now, from these numbers, these numbers are 2 sets. There are 2 sets of numbers here, right? Okay. So how you first of all assign? You now say we now map the demand to the values. We now map the demand to the values. What does that mean? You are going to put your random number here, right? And then you now put your demand. So what you are trying to do is we are trying to look at these values and map them to their demand. Let me show you what I mean. Now, this part is not covered in the textbook, but it will make you understand where they are getting some of their values from. So let's start with the first value now. The random number 41, right? The demand, how do we know what the demand is? You go to this random number from the probabilistic distribution. You look at where does 41, where does it fall? So we know that it's not here. There's no 40 contained there. There's no 40 contained there. Yes, there's 41 contained there. So it's contained at what? The demand is what? 6, right? Then you go on to the next number, 92, right? For the 92, we know that the number is not contained here. It's not contained, but it's contained here. So our demand is what? 8, right? For the next number, 05, right? We know that 05 is only contained at this side, so our demand will now be what? 4, right? So you just keep on doing it for the same. So for 44, we know that it's contained here, so that will be 6. And then for 66, we know that it is 66 is what? Contained at 7, right? Then for 07, we know that for 07 is contained at what? 4. Then the next one is for 00, 00 is contained at what? 4. 00 is contained at 4. Then 14 and 62. 14 and 62, right? So for 14 is contained at 5. 62, where can you find 62 among the interval? At 7, right? So this is how you get all these values. This demand is what you'll be using when you are trying to now work your table. So now I'm going to work for the next one quickly. Okay, so now having solved for the second set, you're now going to move to the step 4. So for your step 4, you have to now identify your parameters, and your status variables, right? So what that simply means is you're just going to go to your question and identify all the parameters in your question, right? You're just going to list out all these opening stock, 3 days, just list them out. It is part of the process. And in this question, there are no status variables. For you to know what this means, refer back to the note, right? There's a definition of status variables in the note. Then for your step 5, is to what? To identify the output variables. Now, what the concept of output variables looks at the result, the end result of this whole thing that we are trying to do. So the main output variable, in this case is your what? Is your total cost, right? This is what we want to find. We are trying to find the total cost of both of the reordering policies, and then we can now compare which of them is cheaper, right? So when we now compare which of them is actually cheaper, we can now be able to determine which of them the wholesaler should go for. So the main output variable is total cost. However, there are auxiliary output variable, which are the total carrying cost, total ordering cost, and the likes. So let's dive into the major solving. Now, to stimulate what? Let's start with the 15 units at a reorder level of 15 units, right? So, right, to stimulate 15 units at a reorder level of 15 units. Now, like I told you before, what this means is that if our inventory or if our goods is at 15 or lower than 15, we'll have to place an order for 15 units, right? So first of all, we called our vendor, supply me 15 units of goods, right? They now supplied you. You are now telling yourself that, okay, once this thing goes down to a certain point, we'll now call them again to now give us 15 units. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is how we are first of all going to stimulate 15 units at a reorder level of 15 units. First, we are going to, now don't forget, there's a part that said which is more economical over a 10-day period, right? So that means you are going to look at the reorder level for a 10-day period. the question might be changed to like a 5-day period, a 6-day period, but for this case, it's a 10-day period. So we are going to say day, right? We are looking for at a 10-day period. Then we are now going to say opening stock, our opening stock, right? Then the next will now be our demand. The next will now be our closing stock. Then the next will now be what? Our ordering cost, then our carrying cost, right? And then our stock out cost, and then our main output variable is now what? Total cost, right? Okay. So now, as we've done this now, what you're now going to do now, you're going to put your D because it's for a 10-day period. So you fill in that column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? Okay. Okay. So our opening stock is what? 17 units. Right? Our opening stock is 17 units. So we are going to put 17 here. Right? Our demand. Now you go back to your calculation, right? You go back to your calculation. So the first demand was what? 6. You see how important this thing is that you see how important it is that you map out this clearly so that you understand. So our first demand is 6. So we are going to see 6. We're going to put 6 units. So we are going to now say that. So we are going to now say that 17 minus 6 will give you what? 11, right? So 17 minus 6. That means at first we started with a stock of 17 units. They now demanded 6 units. So what's now left after we have sold or delivered 6 units is what? A closing stock of 11. Now this closing stock will now form the opening stock for the next day. So you put your 11. Then the demand for day 2 is what? Is 8 units, right? Always go back to this 8 units, right? Okay. So you put your 8. You put your 8. Then 11 minus 8, right? 11 minus 8, that will give you 3. So we have a stock of 11. They now demanded 8 units. What's left now is what? 3 units. Okay. So you now go to your day 3. This closing stock will now form your what? Opening stock of what? 3 units. So what is the demand now? The demand for the day 3 is what? 4, right? So it's 4. That means we have a stock of 3 units. They now demanded for 4 units. We can only deliver 3, right? That means there's one that is left over. So that means there's no closing stock. There's nothing for us to carry over. There's nothing at all, right? So there's nothing at all. Rather, we are even going at a shortage of 1 unit. So there's nothing at all. So we are going to take this. So we are now going to, now they said, remember we are doing 15 units at every other level of 15 units. That means when our stock, when it finishes, we'll call our vendor to bring what? 15 units. So we are going to add plus 15. At this point, we have now called our vendor. Alpha, bring 15 units, right? So day 4, what is the value for your day 4? So your day 4 value is what? So this is your day 1, day 2, day 3, and your day 4. Your day 4 is 6. So demand is what? 6, right? So 6 minus 15. Okay, so 6 minus 15 gives you what? 9 units, right? So that's your closing stock, right? So this is what will now form the opening stock. So this will be 9, right? So that will be 9. So the demand for the 5th day now is 7, right? So 7. So 9 minus 7 gives you what? 2, right? So now this closing stock will now form your opening stock of what? 2 units, right? So your for your day 6, for your day 6, so this is day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 4 units. So now there's a stock out, right? There's no closing stock in this case because we have a stock of 2 and they are demanding 4. That means we are short of what? 2. There's nothing at all. So at this point, you now what? Make a reorder of 15 units because while we are dealing with 15 units at a reorder level of what? 15 units, right? So that's for your 15. So for your day 7 now, your day 7, our demand is what? 4, right? I'll just fill in this column so that we would not be confusing ourselves. So 4, 4, 4, 5, and 7. That's what is left. 4, 5, and what? 7. Right? So if we now demand 4 units, right? So 15 minus 4. So what's left here is 11 units. So this will now become our opening stock, which will be 11. 11 minus 4. 11 minus 4 gives you what? 7. Then this will now be our opening. 7 minus 5 gives you 2. Then this will now become our opening. Then at this point, we have to work. We order to just close everything. 2 plus 5, that will be 17 minus 7. I'll give you what? 10. I don't know if you've understood this part. All you simply need to do is get your opening stock and just keep working it. So now your ordering cost, like I said, your ordering cost looks at the cost you use in buying that particular goods, all the costs that you incur in order to buy that goods, to order that goods, is what you call your ordering cost. And there's a value that is stated for it. They say 15 naira per order. So for your opening stock, it is assumed that you ordered 15 units. So 50, they say 15 naira per order, not per unit. So you are going to say for this, we made one order of what? 15 units. So 15, right? So one order, that will be what? 15 naira. Here there was no order. No order was made. No order was made here. However, there was an order here, right? There was a new order of 15 units. So we put our 50 here. There was no order here. There's no order here. There was an order here. So be 50. No order here. No order here. There was an order here. So 50. So when you, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Why for your carrying cost? I told you that your carrying cost looks at the cost that you incur for keeping that inventory, for not selling that inventory, for keeping that inventory over time is what we call your carrying cost. And how do you get your carrying cost? Your carrying cost is based on your closing stock because these are the goods that you have kept and you did not sell. So you have to what? Incur the cost of storage, incur the cost of security, and many other things. Okay. So there's a value that is attached for your carrying cost, which is 15 naira per unit per day. So your closing stock, you do 11 times 15, right? That'll give you 165, right? And then 3 times 15, that'll give you 45. So you'll be doing your closing stock times the per unit. This one is per unit too. Then there's nothing here. Then your closing stock is 9 times 15, 135. Then 2 times 15 is 30, nothing here. Then 11 times 15 is 165. And then 7 times 15 is what? 105. And then 2 times 15 is what? 30, right? And then 10 times 15 is what? 150, right? Okay. So for your stock out cost, now this cost looks at the cost that you incur, right? If you are short of stock, the cost that the money that you should have made, but you did not make it because you were out of stock, is all look at what? Stock out cost. So for here, there's no stock out cost, right? How about here? There's no stock out cost. How about here? There was a stock out cost. Why is there a stock out cost? Because we had a stock of 3 units. They now demanded 4 units. That means we were short of what? 1 unit. We would have made extra money, but we did not make because of what? We only had 3 units. So that 1 unit, you now do 1 times what? Look at this loss of goodwill. Loss of goodwill for each unit out of stock is 30. So 1 times 30 gives you what? 30. Remember to put your dash here. So yeah, there was no stock out. Here there was no stock out. Here there was a stock out. We had two units of stock. They demanded 4 units, so we could only supply 2 units. So 2 minus 4 gives you 2 units. So 2 times 30. Right? No, is it 2 times 30? Yes, 2 times 30. That'll be what? That'll be what? 60, right? Okay. So is there any other stock out? There's no stock out again. How you get to measure your stock out is anywhere you see a dash under the closing stock, you know that it's most likely a stock out. So there's nothing here, nothing here, nothing here, nothing here. And then for your total cost, you now be adding all these costs by this side. So 50 plus 60, 50 plus 165 gives you 215. Then there's nothing here. Dash 0 plus 45 plus 0 is 45. 0 plus 0 plus 30 is 30. Then 50 plus 135 is 185. Then here will be 30. Here will be 60. 165 plus 50, that will be 215. Here will be 105. Here will be 30. Here will be 200. So you now balance everything up, right? Now do your total. So 50 plus 50 plus 50, here will give you 200. So 165 plus 45 plus 135 plus 30 plus 165 plus 105 plus 30 plus 150 give you, here will be what? 8 800 and what? 825. Here will be what? 90. So you can simply add everything here, or you can simply just add this. So 200 plus 82, yes, 825 from our calculation, plus 825 plus 90. I'll give you what? 1115. Now, so does that make sense? Right?